Now to the main ballroom. The Healing Our Waters Coalition, which is a group of 115 environmental groups, are meeting here. They're starting their meeting today, and we're going to take you into their session now.
Habitat, reduce runoff pollution, and fights the introduction of new invasive species. We've also secured more than $2 billion in federal funding to improve the nation's wastewater infrastructure. This is a very significant accomplishment for this coalition and all of our partners and allies, and we should be quite proud of that. These investments are improving the lives of people and in communities big and small, in cities and on farms. Federal funds are helping to reduce sewage contamination so the beaches are cleaner. Federal funds are helping restore habitats so that fish and wildlife are returning and people can enjoy a robust regional outdoor recreational economy. Federal funds are helping clean up toxic muck in our harbors. We're very close to some of those areas right here in Cleveland and our rivers so that people can, again, invest in their waterfronts and spur economic development. But as Jordan likes to remind us when we do public messaging and talking to the media and others externally, there is really a lot more work to be done. We are not even close to finishing the job here. We still have antiquated sewers. We're sitting in a city that has that problem. We're going to hear very shortly from a representative from the city of Cleveland, can talk more about that. Toxic sediment in our harbors are still plaguing us. We've got manure, fertilizer runoff from our ag fields. I think the story of Northwest Ohio and Lake Erie speaks for itself. I'm sure everybody in this room is familiar with that. We've also got an emerging crisis that we've been attempting to tackle here in the last couple of years called the Asian carp. Not to mention climate change. Climate change will put additional stress on the Great Lakes. So while the overall health of the Great Lakes has improved, the current threats are no less severe than they have been over the past several decades. Left unaddressed, these threats will profoundly alter these magnificent bodies of water that we all love and work so hard to protect. So we need to remain committed. We must see the effort through. We can't stop now. That's why I'm glad to see so many people coming back year in and year out, because you're the folks who have that energy and that dedication that we know we can count on, and you'll be here next year and the year after that and the year after that. We need support, continued support, from our public officials. I'm sure it hasn't escaped anybody's attention. This year is a presidential election year, and we especially need a leader in the White House who's going to advance Great Lakes restoration in a meaningful and substantive way. We need bipartisan presidential leadership. It's been critical to our restoration efforts. President Bush established the region-wide planning process, as most of you know, that really got the thinking going on the modern-day Great Lakes restoration effort here that we're all part of, and put together that comprehensive plan some years ago. And President Obama, in partnership with the U.S. Congress, infused millions of dollars to get that plan off the ground. We've come this far with bipartisan presidential leadership. We need to maintain our progress and continue to move forward. We need the next president to carry the torch for Great Lakes restoration. I think all of you have probably seen the life-size cutouts out here of our president, our presidential candidates. Feel free to go up and take a picture with one of them. They're very friendly. But this is a big theme for our conference this year is presidential election. And, you know, we did this, some of you remember the last time around. We also placed great focus on that because obviously we need leadership at the highest levels. So in less than 60 days, the nation is going to be choosing the next president. And it's imperative that both President Obama and Governor Romney embrace restoration. It's going to be essential to have a president who will work with Congress and continue the good work being done in Ohio and all across this region. If restoration efforts falter, projects will only get more difficult and expensive the longer we wait. That's another Jordan Lubekin one. We've heard him say that about I don't know, maybe 2,000 times. But it's so true, and it's a very effective message, and we should all be using it. So like we did in 2008, as I mentioned, the coalition has been, the last several months, has been working tirelessly to ensure that both President Obama and Governor Romney understand just how deeply the people of this region care about their lakes. And we put forward a pledge that asks two pretty straightforward questions. First question is, will you maintain funding for restoration programs? And the second question is, will you commit to building a physical barrier to stop Asian carp from invading the Great Lakes? To date, neither candidate has signed the pledge, nor have we heard much elaboration on their Great Lakes platform, and we hope and are excited that that might change at this event this week. We're happy to report that both campaigns will be sending representatives to our conference. We have a closing plenary session on Thursday morning. We hope you can all stay and be there to hear that. to hear the candidates' representatives talk about their vision for Great Lakes restoration, protection, and really hone in on those two questions, among other things. I think it's going to be a very illuminating session. The Obama campaign has named Carol Browner, who many of you know over the years and her work on environmental issues. She was the White House Energy and Climate Change Director for President Obama and the former EPA administrator under President Clinton. We are working hard with the Romney campaign. We expect an imminent confirmation here who they will be sending. But as I said, both candidates have pledged a representative, and we think that's going to be a very exciting session on Thursday morning. So please, please hang in there. I know it's going to be a tiring week, but we hope to see you all on Thursday morning. So with that, I think I will get to our next speaker. But just to close, I really wish I could personally recognize everybody in this room, because this is the heart and soul of the Healing Our Waters Coalition. We could not have done it without you. I've been working with environmental coalitions for 25 or 30 years, and it's absolutely safe for me to say that I've never been associated with a coalition that's able to sort of stay together and be coordinated and as effective as all of you have been. It's just been an amazing experience. So again, thank you very much. Real proud to say that, and I think I can speak on behalf of the House staff and the House Governance Board that share those same sentiments. So thanks again for coming. I'm going to quickly introduce our next speaker. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is not the only success story we talk about in the Great Lakes. A number of us were in Washington on Friday participating in the signing of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. We've got John Jackson up here from Great Lakes United, and also co-chair for the Howe Coalition, who I think has been paying attention to this for, I won't age him, but I think it's safe to say that John is perhaps the grandfather of the Great Lakes Water Quality Act, and may know more about it than anybody in this room. So John, if you could come up and share your thoughts on that, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Oh, he was right. It is bright. I saw people here before, but they've suddenly disappeared. Anyway, it certainly was a delight to be in D.C. after last Friday, after 8 years of review and negotiations by the governments, to finally have a totally revised, substantially revised at least, Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement signed. It was hot and humid there, and I hope that's an indication of how hard people are going to work in terms of implementing the agreement. And interestingly, it's now called the Great Lakes Water Quality Protocol of 2012, rather than the agreement, but I suspect we will all fall into the old language. This agreement is absolutely critical to us, as it has been since 1972, in terms of helping us work together across the border, across the entire ecosystem, all the way from Duluth out to Quebec City, to protect these waters and to protect this basin. And without this binational agreement, that assured working together of the governments and also the pulling together of the citizens is not likely to be as strong or as powerful. So it's an absolutely critical agreement. As many of you in this room, we've all worked together in terms of making input as they were going through the review and the revision of the agreement. And I'm pleased to say that when you read the agreement, you'll see your footprints in that agreement. You'll see language that we were pushing for added to the agreement that was not there before. And you'll see also preserved things that we pushed for to make sure they would be preserved because of our fear that they might disappear. Let me give you a few examples. The governments have committed to keep the focus of this agreement on water quality. That's not to say that other issues in the Great Lakes aren't essential and that other agreements that are there already should not continue to be worked on, but the fear that it would become too watered down if we move beyond quality. But the critical thing, which all of us in this room are pushing for, is to recognize that there are other threats to water quality that were not recognized in the old agreement and that they were not committed to address. These include the addition of annexes on aquatic invasive species, climate change, habitat, harmful substances other than just persistent toxic substances being added to the agreement. Absolutely critical. The other thing, and these were some principles, and the guiding principles have been substantially changed And they have added principles that we have all been consistently pushing for over the years. Polluter pays, precautionary approach, prevention, chemical and process substitution rather than simply reduction, getting other ways of making products, getting other ways of creating things. And the retention of virtual elimination and zero discharge as critical components of this. So things that we all were really pushing for. The agreement also contains some targets, not as many as we certainly would like to see, for addressing these substances. One of the most important, of course, relates to Lake Erie and the recognition of the need to deal with nutrients and to have a plan and to have action to deal with nutrients. I have sort of, must admit, really mixed feelings on the target that's there, because the target says that within 3 years, the governments will develop, in terms of Lake Erie, real goals and objectives in terms of nutrient levels and for the lake. And then in an additional 2 years, we'll have developed action plans. Frankly, I think that's too long. I'm sure people around Lake Erie think that's too long and that we need to move forward much more rapidly. Another important specific target is the aquatic invasive species target. And in it, it says very clearly the elimination of any additional introduction of aquatic invasive species to the Great Lakes system. Elimination, a word we've all been pushing for and are delighted to see there. And in addition to, within 2 years, develop action plans for how do you address the situation if aquatic invasive species do get in. What are the sort of things that we can try to deal with it? But unfortunately, for other things like the toxic hotspots, the areas of concern, we have not seen targets there in terms of when they're going to be cleaned up. You know, this community and those other 40 communities around the Great Lakes Basin that have been designated as the most seriously in danger. A couple of other things that we're pleased to see added, no detail, but having them there in principle helps us keep the push on for pushing for them, is the mining issue, a recognition that mining is something that matters and is significant to the basin. A couple of specific statements on radioactive materials, that the governments will adopt programs to address sources of radioactive materials, and also that one government must notify the other government of any plans for the storage and transfer of nuclear waste or radioactive materials in the Great Lakes, or for the construction of new facilities. Those are new components that we were pushing for very hard. So while we're really pleased to see that, and there's certainly would like to see a lot more targets, a lot more specific, a lot of it is about planning. We want to make sure that planning happens rapidly so we can get on to the real action. But we have a few major concerns about the Water Quality Agreement and its implementation. The review that the governments did with a lot of public input, like almost 8 years ago now, said that the major problem with the old agreement was that it never was adequately implemented. It was never fully implemented. And it pointed out the main reasons for that lack of implementation, which was the lack of resources to do the job and the lack of tough regulations and legislation to do the job. There's nothing in this new agreement that makes any clearer commitment in terms of doing that. And so we really are very concerned about this. So we really are calling upon the governments, and we all are going to have to push even harder than we have been before for the 3 following things in terms of getting this agreement implemented. The first is to ensure that there are adequate resources available to implement the agreement. And unfortunately, the directions that we're seeing in both countries don't give one excitement and confidence that that will happen. On the Canadian side, we've been seeing the federal government this year has reduced the number of scientists working on environmental issues and working in the Great Lakes by a few hundred people, at the same time as they were signing an agreement that says it will be science-based decision-making. And if we're losing the scientists, we're losing the capacity to do that. Also, their plans to close down and a truly amazing set of little lakes in northern Ontario that have been the main experimental station where we've learned more about phosphorus, where we've learned more about mercury, how it operates and how to address it. The plans to privatize it, as they call it, and certainly no one is jumping in thinking they're going to make money out of this, so it's very likely to instead disappear. And on the US side, yes, we've seen boosts in terms of money, but we also have seen that amounts of money being reduced year by year. And it really makes us know that every year is a struggle to keep the resources there to do the job. The second thing that we need are stronger and more regulations and legislation from the governments. Throughout the agreement, they use the phrase by voluntary and non-voluntary mechanisms. But unfortunately, the trend that we're seeing is again pointing towards not doing more new regulations or legislation to toughen the situation. This year in Canada, again, the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act has been dramatically weakened, exempting many items from environmental assessment reviews that were required before, changes that make them have to happen quicker and weaken the public role in it. The Fisheries Act has been changed in very dramatic ways, all for the negative. On the US side, every time we talk about new regulation or legislation, it's a huge congressional fight and always congressional pressure to actually be reducing and weakening such things. So we have to continue to push to make sure that we toughen the legislation and regulations and add to them. The third thing that's absolutely critical, and we certainly all were pushing it as we went through the review of the Water Quality Agreement, is around the public role, around your role in being invited inside to be part of the development of the programs. The new agreement has the reference to the public many more times than the old agreement did. And the old agreement was there only once, relating to the remedial action plans and to LAMPs, the lake-wide management plans. Now it's basically there for almost every one of them. But it simply says, well, consult with. What does that mean? What are all the various mechanisms? We would like to have seen much more specific, and we are going to have to push for the specific mechanisms to make sure that we are at the table involved. There's only one specific part, and they do say that the International Joint Commission's Water Quality Board will now include in it public members. That's a big step forward. It's something we've been pushing for a couple of decades, and pleased to see that. But we also need to have public sitting at the table on the committees that are developing the programs and the plans. The way in which this agreement is being implemented is through committees that the governments are setting up. We need to be there, and we will have to push for them. So in conclusion, I just want to say that it is an important step forward for us. The Water Quality Agreement brings forward more principles and commitments from the government that we can use, not just in terms of implementing the Water Quality Agreement, but can use throughout all our other work on the Great Lakes. Because if they made that commitment here, we can hold them to those commitments elsewhere. But it's only going to get implemented if we continue to work together to push for getting those strengthenings that we need. And so we really look forward to working with you on that and in terms of getting this essential, important agreement implemented. So thank you. My final duty here is to introduce our next speaker, who is Kristy Meyer, who's with the Ohio Environmental Council. She's their Director of Agriculture and Clean Water Programs, and she is also on the Healing Our Waters Governance Board. Kristy.
Good morning, and thank you to all of you for joining us here today in Cleveland, Ohio, and welcome. What better place to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Clean Water Act and how far we have come to protect and restore our Great Lakes than on the shores of Lake Erie. Lake Erie is the shallowest and the warmest of all the Great Lakes, which is some of the reasons why it is such an overachiever, producing more fish for human consumption than all of the Great Lakes combined. It is an economic powerhouse, a natural wonder, the undisputed walleye capital of the world, and a place where memories are made. In Ohio alone, this hardworking lake sustains more than 114,000 jobs and $10 billion in economic activity, and just tourism alone, supplies nearly 3 million people with drinking water, and sustains nurseries, coastal wetlands, and open lake waters that are critical to more than 1,500 identified plant and animal species, including rare, threatened, and endangered species, such as the Kirtland warbler and the four-toed salamander. In fact, Lake Erie is woven into the very fabric of Ohio and the states and the province that border it. And that is why, for over 40 years, the Ohio Environmental Council has been working with so many of you to protect and restore our Great Lakes. We remain watch at the courthouse, standing up for your right and my right to walk that Lake Erie shoreline, standing up at the State House against an industry-written proposal for excessive water withdrawals, and standing up on Capitol Hill, along with Ohio's congressional delegation, to ever pushing to fully restore and protect Lake Erie and all of the Great Lakes. In Ohio and across the Great Lakes, we're very lucky to have such great bipartisan support. Look, we know that restoring and protecting Lake Erie isn't a bipartisan issue. It is an issue of quality of life, and that is why members on all sides of the aisle understand the importance of restoring our Great Lake. They understand that the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is producing practical solutions such as Jeff was talking about, to reduce nutrient pollution flowing into our waters through the use of cover crops and vegetated filter strips, removing toxic sediments in our riverbeds and harbors, and sustaining and restoring critical habitat. Over the next couple of days, we are going to hear more about these amazing success stories, and we should really take the time to celebrate them. But as we heard, there is more work that needs to be done. And that's why it is so refreshing to look out into the crowd and see so many familiar faces, and as equally refreshing to see so many new. So over the next couple of days, I ask that the familiar faces embrace the new ones, and the new ones get acquainted with the veterans, because only together will we be able to fully protect and restore our Great Lakes. So will you join me in taking action to protect and restore our Great Lakes? Because now is the time, and this is the place to renew that quest to protect and restore the Huron, the Ontario, the Michigan, the Erie, the Superior, our homes, the Great Lakes. Thank you. So I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker. And our next speaker is a man of few self-appreciating words, but of great civic action. Mayor Frank G. Jackson, the 56th mayor of Cleveland, lives in Cleveland's central neighborhood where he grew up. He graduated from Cleveland Public Schools and served in the U.S. Army. After returning to Cleveland, he earned an associate's degree from Cuyahoga Community College and his bachelor's degree, master's degree, and law degree from Cleveland State University. No doubt he loves this city. He began his public service as an assistant city prosecutor in the Cleveland Municipal Court Clerk's Office. From 1990 through 2005, he represented Cleveland's 5th Ward on Cleveland City Council. From 2002 to 2005, he also served as a president of Cleveland City Council. And in January 2006, he began his tenure as the mayor of Cleveland. As mayor, he is focused on ensuring that the city offers an excellent quality of life for every resident, business, and visitor, and is addressing every aspect of the city operations and policy to guarantee that he reaches this goal, including many other things. He is presenting Cleveland's downtown lakefront development plan to encourage 3.5 million square feet in new development that encourages recreation, entertainment, commercial, maritime activity, and economic development. And building a sustainable economy through Sustainable Cleveland 2019, which is a 10-year initiative to grow a sustainable economy throughout the region. Before I came up here today, I asked Mayor Jackson, what sparked you to do Sustainable Cleveland 2019? And I loved his response because I agree. He said, I realized that the environment and being sustainable is not at odds with the economy, and that to have a thriving economy, you need to be environmentally sustainable. So Mayor Jackson, thank you for your civic duty. Please join me in welcoming the mayor.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Now that's sustainable. Now, my job is to welcome everyone to the 8th Annual Healing Our Waters Great Lakes Restoration Conference, and I want to thank the conference for choosing Cleveland. The Great Lakes are important. They're important and they're essential. They're essential to our quality of life. They're essential to our health. They're essential to our economy, our recreational activity. It's part of Cleveland and is our greatest, not only natural resource, but it's the greatest resource we have. And we in Cleveland look at how can we protect the Great Lakes, Lake Erie in particular, and how can we create an economy that's a sustainable economy, one that is not one that looks as itself being an adversary to the environmental causes, but one where it's in alignment, where making profit and having environmentally sound policies and practices are all in one. And that's why we created Sustainable Cleveland 2019, so that we in Cleveland can prepare and position Cleveland for the future. And we've looked at our local food industry. We've looked at renewable energy resources. We're looking at many different things and trying to determine how can we, through policy, not only promote our economy, particularly around Lake Erie, but how can we do that in a way that's environmentally sound and friendly? So to that end, we started Sustainable Cleveland 2019, our summit. I believe this is our 4th year. This next week on the 20th and the 21st, we will have our next summit, where we will have a 2-day summit talking about those things that we can do as a city to promote not only our economy, but how we can do it in a way that's environmentally friendly and helps to create a clean water environment. So again, I want to thank you for choosing Cleveland, and I hope you have a good time while you're here.
Thank you again, Mayor. Now I also have the distinct pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Frank Greenland, who is the Director of Watershed Programs. Mr. Greenland has worked for the district since 1988, formerly a planning engineer, project engineer, planning manager, Deputy Director of Engineering and Construction, Director of Capital Programs, and he is now the Director of Watershed Programs. Wow, I'm tired just reading that. You surely have been busy. He has been involved in a variety of wet weather projects, including the district's $3 billion combined sewer overflow control program and the development of the sewer district's regional stormwater management program. A registered professional engineer, he earned his degree in environmental engineering technology from the University of Dayton and Master's in Civil Engineering from Cleveland State University. Please join me in welcoming him. Thank you.
And I want to welcome everyone to the conference. I think the conference is well titled, Great Lakes, Restoration, Healing Our Waters. And I'm going to give you a little perspective on our local situation, and our local waters certainly needed some healing. So what I want to do today is give you the greater Cleveland perspective of where we were a while back, where we are today, and where we need to go in the future to continue to protect our Great Lake and our area streams and rivers. Where we were in the past, we were the poster child of environmental degradation. Not a great thing. I'm a native Clevelander. I remember all of this stuff. Back in the 60s, we had a lake that was declared dead or near dead, and we had a river that burned repeatedly. And the most famous river, the one of great notoriety, was the fire in 1969 on the Cuyahoga River. These were bad events locally, these were bad events nationally, but they really spawned good events going forward. And 3 years later, because of these events, there was a national environmental movement back in the 60s and early 70s that ultimately led to the creation of the Clean Water Act in '72. We had a new EPA to enforce, monitor regulations to protect water quality in '72. And coincidentally, in 1972, a regional sewer district was born locally, then called Cleveland Regional Sewer District, now the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. And our mission is to protect that lake and to protect the streams of our service area. We serve 62 communities, 1 million people. We were brought on board to launch broad regional initiatives to protect our waterways. So we deal with wastewater treatment, interceptor sewers, combined sewer overflow control, stormwater management, industrial monitoring, water quality monitoring. Our mission is to protect this lake. Now, since '72, we've invested over $3 billion in environmental enhancements to bring that lake back, to bring our waterways, our streams back. We've had a lot of local partners. Many of them are sitting in the audience today. We've done a lot of great things. And I'd really like to highlight where we are today in terms of success. $3 billion in investment. And I'll cite the Cuyahoga River. I really think the Cuyahoga River is a national success story in recovery, environmental recovery, bringing back a river that was on fire. Today, if you stand at the bridge pilings that burned in 1969, and you're a fisherman, and you're a good fisherman, you can catch rainbow trout, steelhead trout, at that very location. And I think that's an astounding accomplishment. And it took a lot of dedication. So there's a lot of great things that have happened. We see in the Cuyahoga River, that river was nearly devoid of life in many stretches back in the 60s. We've added fish species over time. We're up to over 65 fish species. And we tend to add 10 to 12 per decade, which is a sign of continued progress. And that's great stuff. And I'm happy to report the Asian carp is not on our list of fish species, and we're really doing this to make sure that that doesn't happen. But there's been significant progress made locally. But we need to go further, and I want to highlight a couple of our initiatives going forward, and I want to stress that we cannot rest on our laurels locally or nationally if we want to protect the Great Lakes system. We've made a lot of gains locally. And we need to continue to invest on the things we've done, sustain that investment so we sustain the gains. I think it's very easy to rest on our laurels and do nothing and not sustain investment. You can make rivers burn again through lack of investment, lack of progress. The sewer district's been very good at maintaining investments of its infrastructure so that those gains that have been realized stay. But we need to launch new programs going forward to continue to protect and improve the lake and our area streams. And we've got two major initiatives going forward. And tomorrow afternoon, there's a session we'll be presenting tomorrow, more details on these initiatives. We have a $3 billion combined sewer overflow control program going forward, and we've launched that program, and a major tunnel system is going in place near Euclid Beach. And once constructed, that tunnel system will reduce CSO discharges by over 1 billion gallons. We've come a long way on the CSO front. Back in the 60s, we had about 9+ billion gallons of annual discharge. We've cut that total in half through a number of initiatives over time, but 4.5 billion gallons of CSO discharge is not good. It's not right. We need to do something about it. So we have a $3 billion program going forward to further reduce that total. Within that program, there's a very exciting green infrastructure component. Cleveland and many urban centers have foreclosure problems, vacancy, abandoned parcels. We want to take a bad situation and make it a good situation through better implementation of green infrastructure, better stormwater management to further reduce CSO discharges, and we're working with a lot of partners to make that happen. We'll talk about the details of that program tomorrow. And finally, regional stormwater management. The district has long been in the stormwater management field. It's one of our responsibilities to tackle stormwater issues regionally. We're talking about stream flooding, stream erosion, stream water quality issues. And we're set to launch a new fee, a new program in 2013 where we will greatly increase our ability to manage stormwater problems, stream problems. All of the streams in our service area flow to that Great Lake, Lake Erie. So it's another major step forward, in my opinion, on the district's ability to protect and enhance that lake and enhance our water resources. So we're very proud of the work we've done. I hope you can come tomorrow to learn more details about CSO and green infrastructure in our stormwater program. And again, I welcome everyone, and I hope this is an educational and informational conference for all of you.